Hello there, and welcome back to another episode of the podcast where I'm doing something a little bit different, as I explained in the last episode, where I am going to be reviewing, giving my opinion on each episode of the Apprentice UK as it comes out at the moment. So this episode, oh, and actually I need to have my disclaimer beforehand. Remember, please, I'm not associated with the BBC, any of the candidates, anything to do with Lord Sugar, Karen Brady, Claude Littner, anybody. I'm not associated with any of it. I am purely a fan of the show and just want to give my opinion. Everything that I contain in this video are complete opinions. And in fact, this video series, it's all opinions. But I just thought it'd be quite fun to, run through each episode and just give my thoughts and initial reactions on what comes up. So this episode was all about bao buns. I've never heard of bao buns before and I had to look it up. So went across to Google and this is what I found. So bao buns, pronounced bao, are also known as steamed buns or baozi, don't know how you pronounce that. They are a delicious, warm, fluffy treat of stuffing wrapped inside a sweet white dough made with a mix of flour, yeast, sugar, baking powder, milk, and oil. The bao is a tad sweeter than its closely related cousin, the dumpling. Sounds good to me. I've never had them. I'm from Jersey. I've never seen them in Jersey. If anyone is in Jersey and knows, somewhere where they sell bao buns, please let me know, because that would be interesting to know. But also, one of the reasons why I probably haven't made too much interest is because it does say that it has got flour in it. I'm gluten-free for health reasons. So do they make gluten-free bao buns? That would be interesting too. That'd be interesting to know. If anyone knows of gluten-free bao buns or has a recipe, let me know. Maybe I will try them. But yeah, so this week was one of those profit-making selling tasks, which I love these ones because I just think that they are I just think that it's interesting how they approach it. And one of the things that I loved straight from the off was, they break into their teams. And has anyone noticed they haven't named their teams yet? Normally, within the first episode or two episodes, they've got the names for their teams down, and there's something really like, evolve or accelerate, or I don't know, they're named after like a Greek or a Roman god of like triumph or something. They're these really out there ostentatious names. But has anyone noticed that they haven't named their teams yet, which I think is quite interesting? I'll be interested to see whether or not they name their teams in episode 3. But what I loved is, they sat down, and particularly the boys. The girls just went in, they were deciding who was going to be the PM, who was going to be the sub-team leader and what have you. And the boys just all sat there, which I just find this so funny when it happens because, they all go in at the beginning, particularly the beginning of episode 1, and they've all got these massive grandeur statements. They're like, yeah, I'm going to boss this. No one's standing in my way of winning this. I'm going to do whatever it takes. And then they sit there at the beginning of the task and they go, who's going to be project manager? Who's going to be PM? And it's literally crickets and tumbleweed, and no one wants to put themselves forward. And, all that they then say is, oh, well, I know nothing about this. Well, you might not know anything particularly about bao buns. Like, I'm going to assume that it's a pretty niche area, but, you're in business. You know how to buy and sell and make a profit, surely. So you've got to come back to the principles of what the task is about, not just what the actual product is. And then I love them because they were like, well, I eat food. Yeah, everyone eats food. That's not really a qualification to be PM, but whatever, just, I wanted to point that out because I just thought it was vaguely amusing how no one wanted to put themselves forward. And then when they did get into the conversation about who was qualified to be PM, it was around who eats food and who eats meat. I just thought that was bizarre. Anyway, I keep looking down because I've got my notes on my phone because I was there typing away as I was watching the episode. So yeah, that was my first bit that I wrote down. My second bit that I wrote down was Tim is back. I love Tim. For those of you who don't know or who didn't watch the previous season, Tim won series 1 way back in the day when the prize was actually to go and work for Alan Sugar. So right at the beginning, for the first, I can't remember how many seasons, but right at the beginning, the premise of the show was to get a job working with Alan Sugar, and to get like this amazing 6-figure salary. They changed it, I can't remember exactly which season they changed it to the investment, which we now see of 250k. But yeah, Tim won way back in the day, first season, getting a job with Alan Sugar. He has since done amazing things. He's got an MBE for his contribution to business. And yeah, he's just doing really well. And I love him. I just think he's so honest. And I think that his observations, and also I just love that all of the aides, they've got notebooks, but not Tim. Tim has got a trusty tablet. I'm not going to say iPad just in case it's not an iPad, but, you know, Tim's there looking all high market. He's not got his notepad. He's not scribbling away. No. He's tapping on a tablet because, you know, that's where Tim's at. I love him. I think he's brilliant. So yeah, Tim was back for this episode because Claude was off sick, which I hope he's back by the next episode because I do like Claude, but it was great to see Tim anyway. So the next observation that I made was with Marnie. So when they started talking about making profit and keeping the costs low, I thought this was a really good idea. So when the girls were all originally in their, in their huddle, they were deciding how to move forward with the task. And Marnie made the really, really valid point that it was a profit-making task. It wasn't really about anything else at the end of the day. So I really liked the idea of making a veg bao bun. I don't know if that's like, you know, a traditional thing. I'm desperately looking to see whether or not all the pictures that I've got up on the side of my screen here, they all seem to have a lot of vegetables in them. I don't know if that's like normal for bao buns, but I thought it was a really good idea. You know, it kind of reminded me of a samosa, and oh god, I love a good samosa. I haven't had a good gluten-free samosa since going gluten-free, but you know, the point is, I thought it was a really good idea. But obviously she got overruled and they went for fish, which then leads us on to the next point. Oh my god, the maths. Now, okay, I'm not going to judge too much. Everybody knows that I am not the best at maths. I didn't do anything mathematical at school past getting a B in my GCSE, and even that was a struggle. Well, actually, no, I lie, because I had to do quite a bit of maths when I did my nursing degree. Every year we had a maths test and you had to get 100% in order to pass that particular module in order to go on to the next year. But, you know, it wasn't crazy complicated maths. It was to make sure that basically you were safe to, calculate drug doses, which totally makes sense. But yeah, just, you know, they were all stood there and they couldn't do 45 times 4, and was it 40? What was it? 44 times 400. That was it. And that just confused me because I was like, well, just break it down. What's 44 times 100 and then times that by 4? Like, why? Oh, I don't know. I couldn't understand in my non-mathematical brain why they were struggling with this so much. And again, this comes back to the thing about claims. They're all going, yeah, I'm amazing. I make these amazing business choices and I've got like, you know, I can create this. I've created these huge businesses. I should be Alan Sugar's next business partner. Now, don't get me wrong. I appreciate that a lot of people struggle with maths and a lot of people have got like a complex about maths, but I don't know. I just think that I don't know. It surprised me, and it just kind of, yeah, it surprised me and it confused me. Because like I said, I'm not a whiz at maths, but I just think that costings is so important. I think you've just got to know, and this is just a complete personal opinion, I just think you've got to know exactly what your costings are for your business. I mean, I know how much everything that I sell in my business costs and what my profit margin is on everything. So like, you know, I've got my Confident CEO journal. I know exactly how much this costs to make. I know exactly what my percentage markup is to sell this journal. And, you know, it's not just the big products like that. I've also got like my little thank you cards, for example. I've got my thank you cards that I put in my my product sales, which go out. I know exactly how much one of these costs. So I can put together my package and I will tell you exactly what that costing is and then my markup for that. And here's like another one that I put in as well. I can tell you exactly how much that costs. And I think that, you know, your costings, it's so important. You need to know in business how much everything is costing. I don't personally think it's good enough to say, oh, you know, that's around £3. Oh, well, you know, I think that's about 10 pence. No, you've got to know exactly how much, because otherwise, how are you going to prepare and scale up if you don't know what numbers you're working with? You've got to know what is your profit, what is your revenue, what is your turnover, and all this kind of thing. So let's just open up the notes again. But yeah, so that's just a little bit of a rant, but it did kind of surprise me that there just didn't seem to be much of a thought process as to what the costings were of everything. And I think Karen picked up on that a few times. I also just thought she was funny where she was like a school teacher. She was like, come on, girls, come on. We need to get on with this. Just, you know, oh, I just thought that was funny. the boys with their buns, I have to say, what the hell? I mean, I'm not being disrespectful. Well, I am being disrespectful, but I've seen Halloween themed cupcakes made by kids that looked more appealing than what they produced. I just, hands up, I would not have purchased those buns. I thought that the guy at Trunky, personally, I think he was being very nice. They must have tasted amazing because I was not blown away by what they produced. But clearly he liked them. He was the customer. As long as he was happy, that's just personal. The girls, on the other hand, I actually really, really liked. I thought their corporate ones were stunning, like absolutely stunning. I would have bought those. But I would have bought them if I was maybe throwing a birthday party or a christening or a wedding or something. I think that they were gorgeous, but I'm not entirely sure that they actually suited the client's brief and the client's need and his business and what have you, which I think was kind of reflected in the conversation that they had and how they had to dramatically come down in price to sell them as well. And I think that comes back to the point of when you're creating something, yes, you are the creator. Yes, you've got your own ideas and your own expertise. You know what works well, what doesn't, what's practical, what isn't practical, what is doable and all the rest of it. But at the end of the day, you are creating something for your client. So you have to bear in mind what their brief is, what their business is, and how that's going to work for them. And I feel that even though what the girls produced, personally, I love them. I thought they were absolutely stunning. And actually, on that note, I think they would fit really well with the colour scheme of like my business and what have you. So maybe if I need some bow buns, I'll contact them. But I just feel like even though they were stunning, they didn't quite fit the brief, which, as I said, I think that was really reflected in the fact that they had to lower the pricing so much. But on the saying that, they had their first win, which was great. Really, really happy for them, because I felt like it was a shame that they didn't get their numbers right, because I feel like if they had got their numbers right at the beginning, and what I'm talking about here is that 45 times 400, because they ended up ordering only like a kilogram of fish when they needed 5 kilos of fish, I think it was. That's a huge difference. Like, that's not just a couple of 100 grams difference. 1 kg to 5 kg, that's a huge difference. And I feel like if they had actually got that calculation correct at the beginning, then they probably would have been able to make more product and probably sell more product as well. Because, well, when they were at the market, I loved that they actually scoped out what everybody else was selling, and then they upped their prices based on what a competitor was doing the other side of the market. They had somebody else selling bao buns, but they didn't have the recipe and the fillings that the girls team was selling. So I actually thought that was really, really clever. They quite literally scoped out the market and increased their prices because they had a unique product, because nobody else was selling what they were selling. I thought that was really, really clever. So I love that they got their win, but I do feel if they'd got those calculations correct, then they probably could have made more bao buns, and then they would have had more product to sell, which in turn would have, led to a bigger profit and what have you. So then they could have potentially had a bigger win, but they have made a win, and that's exciting, because we know that in some teams in previous series of The Apprentice, they've had to have multiple weeks go by before either the girls or the boys team have actually got their first win. So it's nice that in the first couple of weeks they've both got a win under their belts. At least, they can't get to like episode 8 or something and then have that one person who's never had a win, which actually I'd be curious to know whether or not this is the first season or how many seasons everybody's got a win within the first 2 episodes. So that's quite interesting. But yeah, I think also what I've noticed with the girls team is they are really coming together. That I feel like in the first episode, I talked about how every new team that comes together, they go through this storming, norming, forming, performing stages. And I feel like the girls have really bandied together and realised that they do need to work together. There's no up or down of it. They have to just pull together if they want to have a win. So I thought that was really nice to see. And finally, we need to touch on the fact that Kevin went. I actually really like Kevin. I know I didn't talk about him in my first review of the review of the first episode, but yeah, I liked Kevin. I thought it was a shame that he went. I think he would have been a kind of quietly confident person to watch if he had continued in the process. But unfortunately, it wasn't meant to be. However, when he went, I thought they raised an incredibly valid point about the difference between revenue and profits. And this is something that I don't see talked about enough in the business community, particularly online. I think so many people are so excited to throw out, oh, I made this much last month, I made this much last year, I've got a 6-figure business, I've got a 7-figure business, and all this kind of thing. But what they don't tell you is whether or not that's revenue or profit. And I find that when I talk to people, a lot of people don't have a clue or any idea what is the difference between revenue and profit. And I think these are two key terms in business that you really need to be able to get your head around. So I have got this particular definition from bench.co, which I think they just summarize it really nicely. So simply put, revenue is how much money a business brings in, while profit is how much money a business keeps after all expenses. And people are saying they've got £100 coming, let's just keep it simple, £100 come into their business, but they have outgoing costs of £95, they've only got £5 profit to play with. So, if you're then investing back into your business, that's something really important to remember. And I think it's important because, online we see so much of people saying, oh, I've got, this 6-figure business, 7-figure business, whatever it is, which is amazing. Don't get me wrong. Most people can only dream of having that much money being turned over in their business. But my point is that when you see people say, I had a 10K month or I had a 100K year or whatever, it doesn't mean that that amount of money is sitting in their bank account. It doesn't mean that that amount of money is sitting in their back pocket for them to just spend, because that is their revenue. Their profit is what is left over after all of the other expenses has come out. And I think that's really, really important to remember, because so often when we buy products, we might think to ourselves, oh, well, let's grab this hand cream, for example. I can't actually remember exactly how much this hand cream is, but let's just say, argument's sake, it's £20. It's a £20 hand cream because it is the White Company. So let's say it's a £20 hand cream. I might be thinking to myself, well, that's £20 going directly into the White Company's bank account, but it's not, because if it costs them £5, argument's say, well, it would be a lot cheaper because they buy them in bulk, but let's say it costs them £5 to make, already that's £5 cost that's not going into the White Company's bank, because that is going out to, their manufacturers and what have you. Yes, it does go into the bank, but you get my point. It goes out to manufacturers. It's not that they're not keeping that £5 is basically what I'm saying. And then obviously there's got to be advertising costs. The label's got to be paid for. The ink has got to be paid for on the label. Every single little part of this bottle. They've also got to pay for the packaging. They've got to pay for the shipping to get it to the shop. All the people who get involved in designing it and coming up with the formula for this particular cream, they've all got to be paid for. And that's all got to come out of the £20 that you might pay for that cream. Obviously, it's all proportionate. I hope I'm making sense what I'm saying. Obviously, don't take what I'm saying as financial advice or whatever. But the point that I'm making is it's important to know the difference between revenue and profit. So revenue, as I said, is the amount of money that business brings in, and the profit is how much is being kept after all expenses. And the point that was being made on the show was that Kevin kind of focused more on the revenue than he did the profit. So he was concentrating so much on this is how much the task is bringing in, but he was kind of neglecting to look at the expenses and what was going out, and therefore he wasn't really concentrating on what the profit was, which wasn't very much, because yes, they bought in however much, I can't remember how much they made now. Yes, they had however much they bought in, which was brilliant, but they spent so much in equipment and ingredients that actually what they made was quite minimal. And I think that's really important to remember when in business, when you're creating your products or your services, is remembering actually what your profit margin is. And as I said, actually knowing how much is every single little part of your business costing, so that you can come up with an appropriate profit margin, essentially, so that you are making money in your business. So then that profit can be put back in to invest more into the business to continue to help it grow. So yeah, those are my thoughts about The Apprentice for this second episode of Buns. I'd love to know what your thoughts were. Let me know if you're listening to this on the podcast, let me know on Instagram at VeritySongon, or you can, if you're listening on YouTube, watching on YouTube, just drop a comment below. I'd love to know what you thought of this episode. As I said, is there such a thing as gluten-free buns? If there are, let me know. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the next episode as ever, and I will see you next week for another review.